Passing the DGCA air regulation exam requires absolute precision. When you are tested on Chapter 14, National Laws, approximations will fail you. You need exact numbers, strict timelines, and specific legal boundaries. We are dissecting the aircraft manuals, specifically Volumes 1 and 2. These two massive volumes map out the core legal frameworks that govern every single civilian flight operating in or out of India. To retain this volume of data, we use a regulatory matrix. This mental architecture organizes every penalty, operational limit, and clearance parameter for total recall on exam day. Hit the subscribe button right now. We regularly post high-density DGCA aviation content and exam deep dives to keep your knowledge current. The DGCA law is structured as a strict hierarchical architecture. Every operational procedure, from starting the engines to crossing international borders, cascades directly from sovereign government authority down to cockpit execution. The foundation is the Aircraft Act of 1934. Its jurisdiction applies across the entirety of India, covering Indian citizens, any aircraft registered in the country, and foreign nationals who maintain their principal place of business here. Under this act, the central government holds absolute authority. If they detect a threat to public property or safety, they can instantly detain an aircraft, or conversely, exempt an aircraft from standard rules. This authority extends to wreck and salvage operations. The aviation protocol does not invent new law here. It directly borrows the maritime framework. Any aircraft wreck or salvage operation is governed identically to ships at sea, falling explicitly under the provisions of the Merchant Shipping Act of 1958. The 1934 Act enforces compliance through severe financial and physical penalties. Carrying unauthorized explosives, arms, or dangerous goods triggers up to 2 years of imprisonment and a 10 lakh rupee fine. Environmental hazards carry similar weight. Slaughtering animals or depositing rubbish within a 10-kilometer radius of an aerodrome guarantees up to 3 years in prison, a 10 lakh fine, or both. If local municipalities fail to remove obstructions, Section 9A takes over. The central government has the legal power to forcibly demolish buildings or cut down trees near an aerodrome to protect flight paths. The 1934 Act serves as the raw enforcement muscle of the matrix. It crushes foundational threats to aviation safety long before a plane powers on. Moving to the aircraft rules of 1937, registration is divided into two distinct classes. Category A applies to aircraft wholly owned by Indian citizens, companies, or the government. Category B applies to foreign entities carrying out business in India. Registration is fragile. The government will cancel it if false information is provided, if the aircraft is destroyed, or critically, if the certificate of airworthiness remains expired for a period exceeding 5 years. International compliance tightens this further. Under the Cape Town Convention, if specific rules are breached, authorities execute a rapid cancellation protocol within exactly 5 working days, without seeking operator consent. This diagram shows the legal requirements for every flight. An aircraft must carry its certificate of airworthiness, certificate of registration, specialized licenses for the crew, radio apparatus licenses, and the official logbooks. Leasing adds a layer of jurisdictional complexity. If a foreign registered aircraft is leased to an operator with no business or residence in India, the rules of the contracting state apply. If the operator resides in India, Indian rules take precedence. Visually, the aircraft surface is strictly regulated. Unauthorized advertisements are prohibited, and state marks must be physically distinct so they are never confused with the mandatory registration and nationality marks. The 1937 rules act as the operational passport. No machine takes to the sky without an unbroken chain of documented legal accountability. Once registered, operational boundaries take effect. No registered aircraft can fly internationally without a DGCA permit. Security checks are legally mandated for boarding, and in-flight photography requires written permission from the Director General. If you accidentally breach prohibited airspace, protocol is rigid. You must immediately broadcast a distress signal and land at the nearest licensed aerodrome for investigation. This map details the exact altitudes and radii for the 6 prohibited zones across India. You must memorize these spatial limits. First, the airspace over the Rashtrapati Bhavan is completely prohibited, extending upward to an unlimited altitude. Similarly, flights are permanently banned over the Tower of Silence on Malabar Hill in Bombay, with restrictions also extending upward without limit. Industrial sites carry specific radii. The area surrounding the Mathura refineries is prohibited within a 10-kilometer radius, again extending upward to unlimited altitude. Over the Bhubaneswar area, the restriction operates as a ceiling. Flight is prohibited below 50,000 feet. Finally, the airspace over the Kalpakan nuclear area is strictly restricted up to an altitude of 10,000 feet. On the tarmac, refueling requires spatial discipline. A minimum clearance of 15 meters must be maintained from any building, and absolutely no naked flames or smoking are permitted within 30 meters of the aircraft. This schematic shows how fuel type alters the danger zone. Vehicles must stay 15 meters away when handling gasoline, 6 meters for kerosene, and a full 43 meters away when a jet aircraft is refueling. Navigation relies on two specific manuals. The operations manual dictates procedures for emergencies and equipment usage, while the route guide provides exact data on aerodromes, navigation aids, and required fuel minimums. Whether navigating over national monuments or managing fuel trucks on the tarmac, operational rules are defined by absolute, unforgiving spatial geometry. The human element is highly regulated. To have sole control of an aircraft, a pilot must be at least 16 years old. For commercial air transport, the maximum age caps at 60, or 65 in a multi-crew environment if the other pilot is under 60. Cabin crew numbers are dictated by passenger volume. An aircraft carrying 10 to 50 passengers requires one crew member. Above 50, 2 are required, adding one additional crew member for every 50 passengers beyond 99. Flight crew logbooks act as permanent legal records. These documents must be preserved for no less than 5 years after the final date of entry. This grid tracks the mandatory quarterly certification schedule. Logbooks must be certified for correctness at the end of March, June, September, and December by specific authorities like the chief flight instructor or operations manager. Logging hours correctly is tested frequently. A student pilot can only log pilot in command time when they are the sole occupant. Flight instructors log PIC time while imparting instruction, and a pilot under supervision logs PIC time only if they are legally entitled to fly in command. A license is instantly disqualified if the applicant has an addiction to narcotics or alcohol, has documented criminal convictions, or is caught suppressing material facts during the application process. If a license expires, the renewal protocol scales with time. If lapsed for 2 to 3 years, the pilot must pass tests of skill and air regulation. If lapsed beyond 3 years, the entire suite of examinations and tests must be retaken from scratch. The human crew is subjected to the same rigid mathematical oversight as the machine, requiring constant certification and strict operational limits. Medical readiness is enforced through a strict zero-tolerance policy. No crew member may consume alcohol, sedatives, or narcotics within 12 hours of flight commencement. Transporting patients requires distinct clearance. Individuals with mental disorders or epilepsy can fly, but only if they carry a specific fitness certificate from a medical practitioner and are accompanied by an escort capable of managing sudden symptoms. General cargo rules do not cover special categories. You need explicit written permission from the government to transport military stores, prisoners, or animals. International flights interface directly with the 1920 customs rules and the 1954 public health rules. Commanders must report any infectious diseases on board to the health officer at least 2 hours prior to arrival. This timeline plots the specific viral incubation periods you must memorize. Cholera, influenza, and pneumonia sit at 5 days. Plague and yellow fever are 6. Diphtheria is 7, relapsing fever 8, meningitis 10, and smallpox, chickenpox, and typhus require a 14-day window. The public health rules strictly ban the repatriation of dead bodies if the individual died from yellow fever, plague, anthrax, or glanders. The aircraft is legally treated as an international biological border, regulated at the highest level to prevent the rapid global transmission of pathogens. The regulatory matrix is now complete. You have the absolute authority of the 1934 Act, the mechanical and operational rigor of the 1937 rules, and the final protective layers of the customs and health mandates. Passing the DGCA exam is about mastering the boundaries of these specific numbers. Altitudes, distances, timelines, and penalties merge into a single operational reality. If there's a specific rule or parameter you need clarified, drop it in the comments below. Like this video, share it with your fellow candidates, and subscribe to ensure you don't miss our next exam breakdown. Mastering this matrix provides the legal foundation for a safe and professional aviation career. Consistency with these regulations ensures the security of the entire network. Keep studying and fly safe. International aviation operates within a strict, invisible matrix of law. If you are preparing for the DGCA commercial pilot license exams, mastering the specific rules that govern this airspace is an absolute requirement. We are breaking down the entire DGCA Air Regulations syllabus step by step. Subscribe to the channel to ensure you have the materials you need to clear the exams. To understand the law, we have to start with the physical reality of flying. The most basic operational standard is Visual Flight Rules, or VFR. Under VFR, a pilot flies between 2,000 and 4,000 feet above aerodrome level and must maintain continuous visual contact with the runway at all times. Look at this cockpit view. In Delhi, heavy smog breaks the pilot's line of sight. Losing visual contact forces the flight under Instrument Flight Rules, or IFR. External visibility is zero, so the pilot relies entirely on internal instruments, specifically the altimeter and vertical speed indicator. Because visibility is an unreliable safety metric, a localized system of sight cannot coordinate global air traffic. The entire global aviation system relies on an absolute, unbreakable legal framework to dictate exactly who can fly and where. That legal framework was built in the aftermath of the Second World War. Representatives from across the globe gathered to draft the Chicago Convention, the foundational document that created modern international air law. The convention established a central principle. Every state possesses exclusive sovereignty over its airspace. Borders extend infinitely on the vertical axis into space, and laterally 25 nautical miles into territorial waters. Because radio frequencies overlap at boundaries like Rajasthan and Pakistan, crossing requires explicit clearance. Because the sky is entirely partitioned by sovereign borders, aircraft cannot simply fly wherever they want. Moving across the globe requires a complex bureaucratic system to secure permission for international transit. To manage that massive bureaucratic load and standardize the global aviation grid, the Chicago Convention established the International Civil Aviation Organization, or ICAO. ICAO is structured in a strict hierarchy. At the top is the Assembly, which is made up of representatives from all participating member states. The Assembly elects a smaller 33-member council. This council then delegates specific technical problems to specialized committees. For example, creating the global protocols for international travel following the COVID pandemic was a task handled at the committee level. For your DGCA exams, you must know the critical regulatory documents this structure produces. Two essential ones are PANS Ops, documented as 8168, which governs aircraft operations, and PANS ATM, or Document 4444, which dictates air traffic management. You also need to memorize the specific standards and recommended practices, known as SARPs. The exam frequently tests Annex 14, which regulates aerodromes, and Annex 17, which covers aviation security. ICAO prints the manuals and establishes the standards. However, the legal authority that allows over 12,000 aircraft to operate simultaneously every single day relies entirely on bilateral agreements signed between individual countries. If every pilot had to personally call a foreign government for permission to enter their airspace, the system would instantly gridlock. With thousands of planes in the air at any given moment, the math of individual permissions is impossible. To solve this, participating nations agreed to specific standardized rules, starting with the first freedom of the air. This grants an aircraft the privilege to fly over a participating state without landing. A flight originating in China can transit straight through Indian airspace to reach Sri Lanka without special clearance. The second freedom grants the privilege to land for non-traffic purposes. If that same aircraft from China develops a technical issue while over India, it has the right to land on Indian soil to refuel or conduct maintenance. But this comes with an absolute limitation. During a second freedom stop, discharging passengers or cargo is strictly prohibited. It is a technical stop only. Moving into commercial rights, the third freedom allows an airline to drop off revenue traffic originating from its home state into a foreign state. This relies heavily on bilateral visa agreements between the two governments. The fourth freedom reverses this. It allows an airline to pick up traffic in a foreign state that is destined for the airline's home state. For instance, Cathay Pacific exercising the right to pick up passengers in Nagpur to fly them back to China. Then there is cabotage. Cabotage is the transport of goods for passengers between two domestic points within the same country by a foreign operator. Under standard international air law, this practice is heavily restricted or entirely banned. The freedoms of the air solve the logistics of routing and borders, but when a flight encounters a crisis, a completely different set of international conventions activates to determine who is legally responsible. The moment an aircraft lifts off the runway, it is governed by a strict set of international treaties. These conventions guarantee that jurisdiction and liability are assigned continuously, regardless of the altitude or coordinates. If a passenger becomes violent, the Tokyo Convention applies. It governs offenses committed on board and grants the pilot in command absolute authority to restrain disruptive individuals and hand them over to local police the moment the aircraft lands. In the event of an unlawful seizure or hijacking, jurisdiction immediately falls under the Hague Convention. The Montreal Convention supplements both Tokyo and Hague. It specifically addresses severe, deliberate acts of violence that endanger human life or result in the physical destruction of aircraft property. If an aircraft in flight drops debris or cargo that damages people or property on the ground below, liability is determined by the Rome Convention. The operating company is held strictly accountable for any surface damage caused. The physical location of an aircraft doesn't always match its registry. If an Indian carrier like Indigo operates a jet leased from Spain, the Geneva Convention dictates the rules to resolve any double registration or international leasing disputes. Finally, issues regarding ticketing, passenger transport rules, and commercial carrier liability are managed under the legal frameworks established by IATA. A pilot flying at 40,000 feet is never operating in a legal vacuum. Whether dealing with a disruptive passenger or falling debris, a specific convention dictates the exact chain of accountability. While many international textbooks lean heavily on European JAA standards, passing the DGCA commercial pilot license exam requires you to map these specific conventions directly to the 24 chapters of the Indian syllabus. You must lock in the specific IKA pairings and pair conventions to their exact jurisdictions. Annex 14 regulates aerodromes. Annex 17 regulates security. The Rome Convention governs ground damage. The Tokyo Convention secures pilot authority. Review the specific boundaries of these conventions before moving on to the exercise modules, and make sure you subscribe to the channel so you don't miss our next DGCA syllabus deep dive. Aviation law is a rigorous exam requirement for a reason. Without this matrix of treaties, borders, and strictly enforced freedoms, the global transportation grid would collapse.